Hello dear students, today the lesson which we are going to discuss is about thinking, its nature, types of thinking and two different theories in thinking. I would say by the end of this interactive session, you will be able to understand the concept of thinking, know what exactly the nature of thinking, and you will be able to differentiate between types of thinking. Also, you will be able to learn how thinking develops gradually in an individual with the help of theories offered by Bruner and Sullivan. So, students, let me ask you, when you think about a bird, you tend to concentrate on ability to fly. When you think about a fish, what gets to your mind? You tend to concentrate on ability to swim, right? Similarly, when you think about human beings, one thing in particular seems to stand out. What is that? Can you guess? That is our ability to think. Hence, no wonder that great philosophers Aristotle once said that human being is a thinking animal. Guys, let me tell you, thinking is an incredible activity. We do it all the time automatically. Right now, when you're listening to my class, maybe you're already thinking. How we think will dictate how we feel, how we react to situation in life, and that in turn will determine our success or failure in life. So take a second and think about most of the things you think about throughout the course of your day. You will probably find that most of them focus on a question or a problem in your life. Common thoughts may include, what should I eat for lunch today? Or what should I wear today? Or what should I do this weekend? So often our thinking directed toward answering problems in our life. The more important the problem, the more time we usually spend thinking about. For example, most people will spend more time thinking about what college they will attend instead of what they will eat for lunch. The bigger the impact of our decision on our life, the more we are going to want to think things through before finalizing our choice. I agree that all of us have general understanding of what the word think means. We often say words like, I'll think about it, I think so, and so on. Thus, we can say the most common yet most complex of cognitive activities is thinking. You know why? This is because thinking involves purposeful mental manipulation of words and images to make you understand more. For example, let me ask you something, okay? How many ventilations are there in your house? Or think of your favorite movie and why do you like it? Or consider whether a change in one of your college policies. For example, attending for college is not mandatory if your college management wants to change that, or would have overall beneficial or harmful effect. So do you understand why I said, this thinking is a very complex phenomena? So as you're clear about thinking, or maybe by now you started thinking about thinking, so let's try to understand the concept of thinking. Thinking is a broad term. Psychologists who study thinking often study what look like very different tasks. So defining thinking turns out to be a tough job and one that itself requires thought. Let's try to discuss some of the definitions of thinking. Okay, so Bruner said thinking is going beyond the information given. Thinking is not just the information you have. You will retrieve that information and you come to a solution or you analyze it further. So it's beyond the information which you have. The second definition given by Newell and Simon is thinking is the process of searching through a problem space. So when there is a problem, you try to search for a solution around the problem. And there is another definition which is a bit more complex than the two, is thinking is a mental process characterized by use of symbols and concepts to represent both inner and outer reality. So, here you heard about the symbols, concepts. So, maybe it's sounding a bit complex. So, to make it more clear, it is mandatory for us to understand, what is thinking. For that, we have to first focus on elements of thinking. So, the elements involved in thinking process are images, concepts, symbols and language. So, symbol is an identity which stands for an event or item of the world, whereas images are pictures in the brain. They involve memory of a percept without stimulus being present, which means right now it's not physically present in front of you, but you feed it in your brain as an image. Now, concept. It refers to a group of objects having similar characteristics. They are broadly classified as simple and complex. So, for simple, you have only one single feature, whereas coming to complex, you have multiple properties. Now, the next one is language. We use language to determine and shape our experiences and thought process. So, to put it very simple, students, let me say thinking is a starting point for many complex cognitive processes like decision making, creative thinking, language, reasoning. For all these things, the starting point is thinking. So, to get a solution, you engage in problem solving. So, thinking leads to getting a solution. You want an innovative idea, so creativity includes thinking. So, to make a decision amongst which one is best, so in the decision making also you start thinking. So, I would say thinking is a big umbrella term under which many complex cognitive processes includes. So, now let us try to understand nature of thinking. The first point, nature of thinking is a series of symbolic processes. We think of one thing, then we make use things of another, and that of still another, and so on. So, many terms or many images, many symbols are interconnected. So, in this way, we manipulate the world internally with the help of symbolic processes. And the second one is thinking is goal oriented. So, the solution of a problem is the goal of a thinking. So, most of the time when we are talking about a productive thinking, there is a goal for that, either to get a creative solution or to choose one thing which is best or to get a solution to a problem. So, for all the things there is an end, a proper goal for thinking. And the third nature of thinking is hindsight and foresight. We look back to the past and we recall sometimes a relevant data or information of past experience. This is called hindsight, and then we take this information or data and apply to new problem, which is nothing but foresight. So, thinking is helpful for your past, present and even for the future. And the fourth important point is thinking involves steps. Yes, especially purposive thinking, there are steps involved like orientation towards a goal, recall of previously observed facts, and then grouping these recalled facts into patterns and inner speech movements and gestures. So, there are sequential steps which are involved in thinking. Now, let us see what are the types of thinking. Clearly, the term thinking is used to refer to more than one specific activity. This suggests there may be different types of thinking. One informal way of categorizing types of thinking is focused thinking and unfocused thinking. Now, focused thinking begins with a clear starting point and has a specific goal. For example, in problem solving thinking, if you want a solution, what would you do? You think, you go in a systematic way. So, it is very focused on the problem to get a solution. Whereas, in unfocused thinking has the character of daydreaming or unintentionally calling to mind a number of different and loosely related ideas. And then the second type, concrete thinking and abstract thinking. Concrete thinking is the simplest form of thinking. Concrete thinking focuses on what is physically around you. It generally involves the use of simple memory images and sensory images. So, usually children make use of concrete thinking. Now, abstract thinking does not require the perception of actual objects like in concrete thinking. So, it is a type of thinking where we make use of concepts and ideas. So, this type of thinking is regarded as superior to perceptual thinking as it leads to discovery and inventions. Abstract thought exists as an idea but not having a physical or concrete existence. Now, there is a third category of thinking, that is convergent thinking and divergent thinking. There are two ways to find a solution. First one is the straightforward way. You find a correct solution by thinking straight to the point, having complete focus on the problem, and this is known as convergent thinking. And the indirect way in which you analyze the problem, think of all possible ways to reach a solution and generate creative ideas to solve it, and then that is known as divergent thinking. To put it very in simple words, convergent thinking is the ability to find a correct solution without having a creative approach. So, if you already know the solution, if you apply it to the current problem, that is enough for convergent. Okay? So, convergent thinking is highly preferable when methods are required to be reapplied and worked on again in a better manner to get a single unambiguous answer. Okay? Whereas, divergent thinking promotes making multiple solutions for a problem. This is used for creativity and inventions. Okay? So, now there is another type of thinking that is known as reflective thinking. As the name indicates, it is higher form of thinking. It aims at solving complex problems rather than simple ones. It requires reorganization of all relevant experiences and finding new ways of reaching to a situation or removing an obstacle. There is an insightful cognitive approach in reflective thinking. It considers logic into account where relevant facts are arranged in logical manner before reaching to conclusion. Now, we can add another type of thinking, and this is more private by nature, known as artistic thinking. This type of thinking is highly private and may use symbols with very personal meaning. For example, your imaginations, your dreams and fantasies, all of them comes under this category. So, now let us see what are the theories we have about thinking. Under this category, we will discuss two theories. The first one is Bruner's theory. So, Jerome S. Bruner offered a theory where he observed the process of cognitive development or development of thinking and postulated 3 stages. Now, this theory, students, you can come across with different names. Okay, you can come across as cognitive development theory, you can come across as thinking development theory, or you can come across as language development theory. As I already told you, language is strongly intertwined with thinking. So, the name can be different, but by and large the theory is same. Okay? So, the 3 forms are the enactive mode. The second type is the iconic mode and the symbolic mode. So, let us see the first one. In enactive representation, it usually originates during a first year. A child at this stage adopts the most basic or primitive way of converting immediate experience into a mental model. This mode of conversation is usually non-verbal, obviously, and is based on action or movement. So, thus a child representations of objects and events in terms of appropriate motor responses or acting out are known as enactive representation. Children understand objects in terms of actions which they can perform with them. For example, a bicycle is there to be ridden, a ball to be played with. Another example which even we adults can also imagine is the answer to the question, how do you tie a shoelace? Can you tell me how do you tie a shoelace? You might say, yes, we know, but we can't put it in a language. So, because it is difficult to express in language the essence of one knowledge of how to do so. Nevertheless, we do know how to tie a shoelace. The necessary knowledge would appear to be stored in some kind of program which coordinates the muscles and the other system responsible for eye-hand coordination. So, now the second type of representation is known as iconic representation. Now, according to Bruner, iconic representation takes place during 1 to 6 years. So, in essence, iconic representation is accessing of a mental representation in the form of images. So, accessing a person's appearance or features of a painting are familiar examples of accessing a mental representation of an image. That's why at this age, for children usually, providing the study material with images can really help them to think and learn easily. And then as they grow, they start developing symbolic representation. This starts taking place during 7 and it continues and above. So, this more sophisticated mode is the last to develop and is more flexible than the previous two modes. Mostly via the medium of language, information is stored using codes and symbols. For example, cat is a symbolic representation of a certain class of animals. Such symbols can be manipulated, sorted, classified, etc. So, the learner is not restricted to using only actions or images. Data storage is accomplished via words, mathematical signs and or other symbol systems. It can be concluded saying that development involves mastery of increasingly more complex modes of thinking from enactive to symbolic. As skills learned, they become automated and become units that can be combined to build up a new set of skilled behaviors. Now, let's turn towards what Sullivan theory is offering. So, another approach to the development of thinking is offered by Harry S. Sullivan. Now, Sullivan is one of the well-known famous psychoanalysts. He divided cognitions into 3 levels or modes of experiences. The first one is prototaxic, the second one is parataxic, and the third one is syntaxic. The first, as we know, is prototaxic level. The earliest and most primitive experiences of an infant takes place on prototaxic level because these experiences cannot be communicated to others. They are difficult to describe or define. So, a neonate or an infant feels hunger and pain, and these prototaxic experiences result in observable actions, for example, sucking or crying. The infant does not know the reason for the actions, and sees no relationship between these actions and being fed. Whereas in adults, prototaxic experiences take the form of momentary sensations, images, feelings, moods and impressions. Now the second level is parataxic level. Now parataxic experiences are pre-logical and usually result when a person assumes a cause and effect relationship between two events that occur coincidentally. An example of parataxic thinking takes place when a child is conditioned to say please in order to receive a candy. If candy and please keep on occurring together a number of times, the child may eventually reach the illogical conclusion that her supplications caused the candy's appearance. And then the third type is syntaxic level. Now experiences that are consensually validated and that can be symbolically communicated takes place on syntaxic level. Let's conclude this session with brief summary of what we learned. We discussed that the concept of thinking is multifaceted and it has elements such as images, concepts, symbols and language. Then we focused on nature of thinking followed by types of thinking, which includes focused thinking and unfocused thinking, and then concrete versus abstract thinking, and then convergent versus divergent thinking. We also discussed the importance of reflective thinking and artistic thinking. Then we discussed Bruner's three modes theory of thinking, which includes the inactive mode, that is representation by doing, and then the iconic mode, which includes images, and the symbolic mode, which usually includes the language. Finally, we discussed three levels of cognitive process offered by Sullivan, namely prototaxic, parataxic and syntaxic levels.